Right on cue, Trump took to Truth Social amid the news that the Justice Department will not pursue criminal charges against former Vice President Mike Pence over his mishandling of classified documents. Trump wrote, "Just announced that they are not going to bring charges against Mike Pence on the document hoax. That's great, but when am I going to be fully exonerated? I'm at least as innocent as he is. And what about Joe Biden, who is hiding at least 1,850 boxes and some located in Chinatown, D.C.? When will the witch hunt against Trump stop?" Now, just so we're clear, just because Mike Pence won't be charged does not somehow absolve Donald Trump. Why? Because the crimes weren't at all the same. Here's the Pence situation. After Trump was found to have taken classified documents, Pence had asked his lawyers to conduct a search out of an abundance of caution, leading to the discovery of a small number of documents with classified markings within 4 boxes in Pence's home. The lawyer immediately alerted the National Archives, which in turn notified the Justice Department. The FBI picked up the documents from Pence's home that evening. Pence's legal team drove the 4 boxes back to Washington, D.C. the following Monday to review the rest of the material for compliance with the Presidential Records Act. Pence's lawyer explains, quote, "Vice President Pence was unaware of the existence of sensitive or classified documents at his personal residence. Vice President Pence understands the high importance of protecting sensitive and classified information and stands ready and willing to cooperate fully with the National Archives and any appropriate inquiry." Contrast that with Donald Trump, who stole documents, refused requests for more than a year from the National Archives for those documents to be returned, had his attorney attest falsely that all the documents had been given back, necessitated a search warrant from a federal magistrate, leading to the FBI executing its search warrant and finding precisely what Trump had claimed were already returned. All the while, he issued bogus excuses like this idea that the FBI planted all the documents and also that he declassified everything. Of course, I'm not sure why you would need to pretend that the FBI planted documents that were already supposedly declassified, but then again, I'm not a third-rate con man throwing legal spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. In fact, just days ago, we found out that the federal prosecutors are reportedly in possession of an audio recording of a summer 2021 meeting in which Trump acknowledges that he had possession of a classified Pentagon document about a potential attack against Iran, indicating that despite his claims to the contrary, Trump knew full well that he retained classified material after leaving the White House. In other words, whereas he claimed that everything was declassified, he clearly understood that it wasn't the case, considering the document that he had couldn't be both declassified by him and also classified to the point that he was, quote, aware of limitations on his ability post-presidency to declassify records, meaning that if Trump ever even had a defense for himself in this case, it looks like he just blew it. All of which is to say, of course Mike Pence won't be treated the same as Trump because, again, while both of them mishandled classified documents, only one of them unlawfully retained those documents after the return was requested and then obstructed justice in attempts to get those documents returned. If Mike Pence was to be treated the same as Trump, he would have had to do the exact same thing as Trump, but he didn't because he is not an abject criminal. You'll note that Trump also referenced Joe Biden, who was also found to have mishandled classified documents and, like Mike Pence, opted to actually cooperate with federal prosecutors as opposed to the Trump tactic of deciding to get himself embroiled in a federal investigation by doing everything he could to hold on to them. I spoke about the difference in these two situations with former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner in a previous episode of our YouTube-only legal series, The Legal Breakdown.
I would say it's as different as night and day. I mean, there is this false equivalency that people are reaching for because, there are some superficial similarities. Joe Biden had some documents he shouldn't have had. Donald Trump had some documents he shouldn't have had. And that is where the similarities stop. Because what did Joe Biden do? When his team alerted him that he had some documents in one of the offices that he stood up after he left the vice presidency, some documents he shouldn't have had. Well, he immediately contacted the National Archives, the rightful owners of those documents, and arranged for them to go to the National Archives. He alerted the Department of Justice. He undertook a diligent search of anywhere else where documents might be that were kind of carried over from the time he was vice president. He found a few more. In 2 other locations, he immediately turned them over, alerted the FBI, and that is basically the end of the story. Now, we can talk in a minute about what the special counsel, who was just appointed by Merrick Garland, will do to investigate all of this, but at least based on the reporting, sounds like that's the end of the story. What did Donald Trump do when it was learned that he had documents that didn't belong to him, documents he was obligated to turn back to the federal government, to the National Archives? Well, first of all, let's remember, he took probably whatever Joe Biden was just found to be in possession of, he probably took that 1,000-fold, boxes and boxes and boxes of what turned out to be classified documents that he had no right to take. And importantly, Brian, he said, and we know he said it because he posted it on his third-rate social media platform, he said, I took those documents and I took them openly and transparently. We don't know at this point if Joe Biden took the documents that were recently found and returned to the National Archives, or if folks packed up his offices and had stuff shipped to various locations. We don't know. The investigation will sort all that out. But then once it was determined that Donald Trump had documents that didn't belong to him, folks from the National Archives for about half a year or more begged and pleaded and cajoled, please give us back the documents you're not lawfully entitled to possess. Donald Trump said, no, they're mine. Then the Department of Justice had to get involved. They sent FBI agents and high DOJ officials, including one of my former colleagues, a guy named Jay Bratt, who went down to Mar-a-Lago and said, give us back the documents you are not lawfully possessing. Donald Trump said no. He did sort of trickle back to the federal government a smattering of documents, but he unlawfully retained most of them for himself. What was the next step the Department of Justice had to take? They had a grand jury that was involved in a criminal investigation of Donald Trump's conduct issue a subpoena. That's a court order. Return all the documents. And Donald Trump didn't. That is why Donald Trump is being criminally investigated for obstructing justice, for violating that grand jury subpoena. And then finally, with no other alternative, the Department of Justice went to a judge, presented all of the evidence, and a judge ruled that there was probable cause that Donald Trump had committed as many as 3 crimes: obstructing justice, unlawfully retaining documents, and mishandling national defense information. That's a crime that falls under the Espionage Act. And the judge issued a search and seizure warrant, went down, the FBI agents executed the warrant. They searched Donald Trump's property, and lo and behold, in his desk drawers, they found and recovered classified documents. So look at how Joe Biden handled the situation. Look at how Donald Trump handled the situation.
So look, Trump can desperately try to pretend that his situation is in any way analogous to that of Mike Pence or Joe Biden, and to be clear, it could have been, but as we know, Trump opted to openly flout the law, thereby ensuring that he wouldn't be treated the same as Mike Pence and Joe Biden. But let's be clear, that was his choice. He decided to lie. He decided to defy subpoenas. The guy is a grown-ass man. He's in charge of his own decisions. And just because he's now being held to account for them doesn't mean that he gets to pretend that he's the same as the other guys who opted not to break the law. Perhaps Trump should learn to take some personal responsibility, what with him being the leader of a political party that quite literally brands itself the party of personal responsibility. So at this point, it's just a matter of time before we see an indictment handed down by the Department of Justice, and we will undoubtedly watch Trump draw these false equivalencies more and more. But just remember, the reason that he's not in the same boat as Biden or Pence is because he made the conscious decision not to be. He opted to break the law, and he did it over and over. He made his bed, now he's got to lie in it. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.